Brianna Wingrove, and my project is on disaster recovery. So for mine, I made my data backup plan to where there should always be a description and location of all the components of the electronic, hybrid, and paper records. I suggested that copies of all patient information be put into a secure area, and there should always be extra copies in case those ones are lost. You should assign responsibility for each component, which identifies backup personnel keys if individuals are inaccessible. Estimate how long the organization provider can function at the various stages of recovery. My disaster recovery plan was to start out by securing the premises. Since the greater the disaster, the less likely the premises will be secured, which will give more access to the patient's health records and lead to more likelihood of them getting stolen or information being leaked. Make sure that all metal cabinets are locked if they are used, especially if they have patient information in them. Prepare a plan to maintain staffing and to make work schedules, and you need to identify temporary ID badges for volunteers and other first responders who will need access. You need to plan to have physical security for the PHI, whereas now that the systems are down, you may not be able to protect those as easily. Also, you need to backload all visits into the master patient index. My disaster recovery plan is to make sure you list all members along with their contact information, roles, and responsibilities. The plan will be invoked once the emergency has been cleared and everything is okay. There will be both internal and external communication to know what all is going on during the disaster from both inside and outside of the facility. Have record of log of everyone that is going in and out of the facility, and be sure to keep track of everybody who has accessed the patient health records. The emergency mode operation plan is to make sure that there has been a communication plan that defines the scope of the outage to the staff and the extent of resources disabled, so everyone knows what is and isn't working, and also so all of staff is aware that there is an emergency. The documentation requirements will be minimal since we are in an emergency. Emergency registration sets that can double as a source of patient identification mid-crisis, ultimately a means of finding the patient's PHI. An emergency paper chart that enables and expedites the standards agreed upon. There will be downtime procedures for paper documentation. There also will be a plan set into place to deal with paper charting since the computers will more than likely be down. As far as education and training goes for the disaster recovery plan and the contingency plan, there will be drills practiced to be sure that everyone is aware of what to do if there is an emergency. During the drill, it's important to remember that things will not always go orderly. So things aren't always going to be perfect during these plans, but you have to do the best you can to make sure that everything has been done correctly. During the drills, try to stay in control as much as possible. Plan for more disaster victims than the organization will likely ever receive, so you need to always be prepared to have more people brought in than what really may come. Plan the victims will arrive at all hospital entrances and expect that collecting information will not be easy. So collecting the information on a bunch of patients coming in is definitely not going to be easy, but you do need to be prepared to be able to collect all of the information. Traditional admitting and discharging will be impossible, whereas there will be so many patients coming in and out, you may not be able to admit them or discharge them the way that you would on a normal daily basis. And the facility should have an easy patient identification system that is simple and ready to be used. So you need to always make sure you have a plan in place to be able to identify patients that are coming in and out, even though there will be a lot of them. Depending on the emergency, you should always have a plan to be able to identify them so that you don't get patients mixed up and lose patients or not know who is in the facility or get patient charts mixed up. There should always be a way to be able to identify them easily.